The luxury cruise ship Serenity of the Seas cut through the calm Mediterranean waters under a perfect azure sky. Damien Rothschild stood on the upper deck, his steel-gray eyes scanning the horizon with the same intensity he brought to boardroom negotiations. At 38, he had built Rothschild Technologies from a garage startup into a global empire worth billions. His innovations in renewable energy had revolutionized entire industries. Yet standing here surrounded by vacationing families and honeymooning couples, he felt profoundly alone. This cruise was supposed to be a break from his relentless work schedule, a chance to recharge. Instead, it only highlighted the emptiness in his personal life. Below deck in the marine research section, Celeste Monroe adjusted her diving equipment with practiced hands. The 24-year-old marine biologist had been granted special permission to conduct coral reef surveys during the cruise route. Her auburn hair was pulled back in a practical ponytail, and her hazel eyes sparkled with excitement behind her diving mask. Celeste lived for these moments beneath the waves where she could study the intricate ecosystems that most people never witnessed. Her colleagues called her obsessive, but she preferred passionate. The ocean was her first love, and she had dedicated her life to protecting it. The afternoon began like any other. Damien was reviewing quarterly reports on his tablet when the ship lurched violently. Passengers screamed as the vessel tilted at an alarming angle. Coffee cups and deck chairs slid across the polished wood. The captain's voice crackled over the intercom announcing they had struck an uncharted reef and passengers should proceed calmly to their muster stations. But there was nothing calm about the chaos that erupted. Celeste had been in the water when the impact occurred. The sudden shift in currents threw her against the reef, and her oxygen tank cracked against sharp coral. She watched in horror as bubbles streamed from the damaged equipment. Years of training kicked in. She needed to surface immediately, but the ship's hull loomed dangerously close above her. Panic threatened to overwhelm her as her lungs began to burn. Damien saw her from the deck, a figure thrashing in the churning water near the damaged hull. Without thinking, he kicked off his expensive Italian leather shoes and dove into the Mediterranean. The cold water shocked his system, but he pushed through it, swimming with powerful strokes toward the struggling diver. His competitive swimming background from his university days served him well as he reached Celeste just as she was losing consciousness. He grabbed her around the waist and kicked hard toward the surface. They broke through the waves together, and Damien kept her head above water as he swam them both toward a lowered rescue boat. Crew members pulled them aboard, and Celeste coughed violently, expelling seawater from her lungs. Her diving mask had been lost, revealing a face that was both terrified and incredibly beautiful. "Are you okay?" Damien asked, his voice rough with concern and exertion. His wet hair was plastered to his forehead, and his designer shirt clung to his muscular frame. Celeste nodded weakly, still coughing. "You saved my life," she managed to gasp out between breaths. Her hazel eyes met his gray ones, and something electric passed between them in that moment. The ship had sustained significant damage and needed to dock at the nearest port for repairs. All passengers were evacuated to a luxury resort on the Greek island of Santorini while arrangements were made. Damien made sure Celeste received proper medical attention, staying by her side even though she insisted she was fine. The ship's doctor confirmed she had been incredibly lucky. Another minute underwater and the outcome would have been very different. That evening, Damien found Celeste sitting alone on the resort terrace, staring out at the sunset, painting the sea in shades of orange and pink. She had changed into a simple white sundress that made her skin glow in the golden light. Her auburn hair hung loose around her shoulders, still slightly damp. "May I join you?" he asked. She looked up and smiled, gesturing to the empty chair beside her. "I never properly thanked you," she said softly. "You risked your life for a complete stranger." Damien sat down, suddenly aware of how different she seemed from the women in his usual social circles. There was no pretense about her, no calculation. Just genuine warmth and intelligence shining from her eyes. "I couldn't just stand there and watch someone drown," he replied. "Besides, you would have done the same for me." Celeste laughed, a sound like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. "I would have tried, though I doubt I could have pulled off such a dramatic rescue. You swim like an Olympic athlete." They talked as the sun disappeared below the horizon and stars began to appear. Celeste told him about her research on coral reef restoration and her dreams of establishing marine sanctuaries. Damien found himself genuinely interested, asking questions that went beyond polite conversation. She spoke with such passion about her work that it reminded him of his own early days in technology, before success had become routine. "What made you get into marine biology?" Damien asked. Celeste's expression grew thoughtful. "When I was 7, my father took me snorkeling for the first time. I saw this underwater world that was so beautiful and complex and fragile. I knew right then that I wanted to spend my life protecting it. My father passed away 5 years ago, but every time I dive, I feel close to him again." Damien felt his chest tighten with unexpected emotion. "My parents died when I was 23. Car accident. I threw myself into building my company afterward. Maybe I was trying to prove something, or maybe just trying not to feel the loss." Celeste reached across the table and placed her hand over his. "I understand that pain. Sometimes work is the only thing that makes sense when everything else feels broken." That simple touch sent warmth spreading through Damien's entire body. He looked down at her delicate hand resting on his and felt something shift inside him. This woman, with her passion for saving coral reefs and her honest emotions, had reached past all his carefully constructed walls. "Can I take you to dinner tomorrow?" he asked, his voice uncharacteristically hesitant. "A real dinner, not just resort food. I know a place in the village with the best seafood you have ever tasted." Celeste hesitated. "You are Damien Rothschild. I looked you up after the rescue. You are worth billions. You could have dinner with anyone in the world. Why would you want to spend time with someone like me?" "Because you are the first person in years who has talked to me like I am just a man, not a bank account," Damien said honestly. "Because when you talk about your work, your whole face lights up with passion. Because you make me want to be someone better than the workaholic billionaire who forgot how to really live." Celeste felt her heart racing. This impossibly handsome man who had saved her life was looking at her like she was the most fascinating person he had ever met. "Tomorrow sounds perfect," she whispered. They sat together under the stars making plans, neither of them realizing that this chance encounter would change both of their lives forever. The collision that had brought them together was just the beginning of a love story that would prove true devotion transcends all barriers. 3 weeks had passed since the cruise ship accident, and Celeste had returned to her research station on a remote section of the Great Barrier Reef. The facility was small and functional, housing only 5 researchers dedicated to studying coral bleaching and restoration techniques. She should have been focused entirely on her work, but her thoughts kept drifting back to Damien. They had spent every day together in Santorini before she had to leave. Long walks through whitewashed villages, dinners overlooking the caldera, conversations that lasted until sunrise. He had kissed her on their final evening together, a gentle kiss full of promise that had made her toes curl. She had not expected to hear from him again. Men like Damien Rothschild did not maintain relationships with ordinary marine biologists, but he had proven her wrong. Every morning she woke to messages from him, photos of sunrises from whatever city his business had taken him to that day, questions about her research, stories about his meetings and deals. He made her laugh with observations about the corporate world that revealed he had not lost his sense of humor despite his success. Video calls became a nightly ritual. Seeing his face on her laptop screen was the highlight of Celeste's day. "I miss you," Damien admitted during one of their calls. His hair was slightly disheveled and he had loosened his tie. Behind him, Celeste could see the skyline of Singapore through his hotel window. "I have not been able to stop thinking about you since Santorini." Celeste felt her cheeks flush. "I miss you too, more than I expected to." "This is crazy, is it not? We barely know each other." Damien's smile was tender. "I know that you prefer tea to coffee, that you hum when you are concentrating, that you believe coral reefs are more valuable than all the money in the world, that you have a birthmark shaped like a star on your left shoulder, that your laugh is the most beautiful sound I have ever heard. I may not know everything about you yet, but I know enough to be certain I want to know everything." The following week, Celeste was conducting a dive survey when she surfaced to find a luxury yacht anchored near the research station. Her colleagues were gathered on the dock, staring at the vessel in amazement. When Celeste climbed onto the platform, she saw Damien walking toward her, impossibly handsome in khaki pants and a white linen shirt that contrasted beautifully with his tanned skin. "What are you doing here?" she gasped, still dripping seawater. "Coming to see you," he replied simply. "I realized that video calls were not enough. I needed to be where you are." Damien stayed for 2 weeks, and Celeste showed him her underwater world. She taught him to dive properly, and together they explored the reef she was working to preserve. Damien was awed by the vibrant colors and incredible diversity of life. Through Celeste's eyes, he began to understand the urgent need for ocean conservation. One evening, as they floated above a pristine coral garden, Celeste took his hand and pointed to a family of clownfish darting among anemone tentacles. "This is why I do what I do," she signaled. "This beauty is worth protecting." Damien squeezed her hand in response, feeling something profound shift in his priorities. On land, Damien surprised Celeste by genuinely engaging with her research. He asked thoughtful questions and offered suggestions from a business perspective that actually helped streamline some of her data collection methods. "What if you could scale this restoration technique?" he proposed one afternoon as they reviewed her findings. "With proper funding and technology, you could multiply your impact 100-fold." Celeste laughed. "Funding is always the problem. Marine conservation does not exactly attract billionaire investors." Damien looked at her seriously. "It does now. I want to invest in your work, not as charity, but as a partner. What you are doing here is important, and I want to help make it bigger." Their relationship deepened with each passing day. They shared meals of fresh fish and tropical fruit. They talked about their dreams and fears. Celeste admitted that she sometimes felt inadequate compared to her more published colleagues. Damien confessed that his success had cost him every meaningful relationship in his life until now. They kissed under star-filled skies and held hands during sunset walks along the beach. But they also maintained boundaries, both sensing that what they were building was too important to rush. When Damien finally had to return to his business responsibilities, saying goodbye was physically painful. "Come with me," he urged as they stood on the dock beside the yacht that would take him back to civilization. "Just for a week. I want to show you my world the way you have shown me yours." Celeste hesitated. "I have responsibilities here. My research cannot just stop." "Bring your team," Damien countered. "I will provide everything you need to continue working." "Please, Celeste. I am not ready to be apart from you again." Celeste found herself agreeing, and soon she and 2 of her colleagues were flying first class to Seattle, where Rothschild Technologies was headquartered. Damien's world was as different from hers as she had imagined. Gleaming skyscrapers, luxurious penthouse apartments, high-powered meetings where millions of dollars were discussed casually. But Damien never made her feel out of place. He introduced her to his executives as his partner and gave her team full access to his company's research facilities to continue their work. One evening, Damien took Celeste to a charity gala. She wore a borrowed designer gown that made her feel like a princess, and Damien could not take his eyes off her all night. But it was during the auction when everything changed. A marine conservation group was raising funds, and Damien stood up and pledged $10 million. The room erupted in applause, but he only looked at Celeste. "For the woman who taught me to see beyond profit margins," he said, "for the future of our oceans." Later that night, standing on the balcony of his penthouse with the city lights spread below them, Damien pulled Celeste into his arms. "I love you," he said simply. "I know it has only been a few months, but I have never been more certain of anything. You have changed my entire life. You have given me purpose beyond just making money. You have made me feel truly alive for the first time in years." Celeste felt tears streaming down her face. "I love you too. I tried not to. Our worlds are so different, but I cannot help it. When I am with you, everything feels right." 6 months later, Damien arranged a research expedition to the Arctic to study the effects of climate change on marine ecosystems. Celeste was thrilled by the opportunity until she realized Damien had planned something extra. On their final night, beneath the dancing aurora borealis painting the sky in ribbons of green and purple, Damien got down on one knee on the deck of their research vessel. "Celeste Monroe, you have taught me that true wealth is not measured in money, but in passion and purpose and love. You have shown me beauty I never knew existed. Will you marry me and let me spend the rest of my life supporting your dreams and protecting the oceans you love? The ring was unique, designed specifically for her. The band was made from recycled ocean plastic mixed with platinum, and the stone was a rare blue diamond that matched the color of tropical waters. Celeste threw her arms around him, knocking them both off balance. Yes, she cried. Yes, 1,000 times, yes. As they kissed under the northern lights, both of them knew they had found something rare and precious. Two souls from different worlds who had discovered they were meant to be together. The wedding took place on a private island in the Maldives, a location Damien had chosen specifically because of its pristine coral reefs. 50 guests attended, a small intimate gathering of family and close friends. The ceremony was held on a white sand beach at sunset, with the turquoise ocean providing a breathtaking backdrop. Celeste wore a gown of flowing ivory silk that caught the breeze like waves. Her auburn hair was adorned with tiny white shells and fresh hibiscus flowers. She looked like a goddess emerging from the sea. Damien stood at the altar made of driftwood and tropical blooms, his heart pounding as he watched Celeste walk toward him barefoot in the sand. She was the most beautiful sight he had ever witnessed, and he still could not quite believe she had chosen him. Her hazel eyes were luminous with happiness, and her smile was radiant enough to rival the setting sun. When she reached him, he took her hands and felt his world become complete. "You are breathtaking," he whispered. Celeste blushed. "You are not so bad yourself," she replied, making him laugh. The ceremony was simple and heartfelt. They exchanged vows they had written themselves, promises of partnership and adventure and endless love. When the officiant pronounced them husband and wife, Damien kissed Celeste with such tenderness and passion that several guests wiped away tears. The reception was a joyful celebration with dancing under strings of lights and a feast of fresh seafood. But both Damien and Celeste were acutely aware of what awaited them when the evening ended. As the last guests departed and fireworks lit up the night sky, Damien took Celeste's hand and led her along a torch-lit path to the private villa he had reserved for their wedding night. The structure was open air with billowing white curtains and a massive bed covered in rose petals. The sound of waves provided a soothing rhythm, and the scent of tropical flowers filled the air. "Alone, finally?" Damien said softly, closing the curtains to give them privacy. His hands were trembling slightly as he reached up to touch Celeste's face. Celeste felt her heart racing so fast she thought it might burst from her chest. She had never been with anyone before, had never wanted anyone the way she wanted Damien. But she was also nervous, uncertain of what to expect. Damien sensed her anxiety and pulled back slightly. "We do not have to rush anything tonight," he assured her. "I just want you to be comfortable." Celeste shook her head. "I want this! I want you! I have been dreaming about this moment since Santorini. I'm just a little nervous. Please be gentle with me." Those words made something primal stir in Damien's chest. He cupped her face in his hands and kissed her slowly, thoroughly, until he felt her relax against him. "I will always be gentle with you," he promised against her lips. "I will cherish you and protect you and love you for the rest of our lives. You are my treasure, Celeste, the most precious thing in my world." With trembling hands, he reached behind her and slowly lowered the zipper of her wedding gown. The silk pooled at her feet, leaving her standing before him in delicate white lace lingerie that made his mouth go dry. "You are exquisite," Damien breathed. Celeste felt exposed and vulnerable, but the way Damien was looking at her with such reverence and desire made her feel powerful and beautiful. She reached up and began unbuttoning his shirt, her fingers fumbling slightly with nervousness. Damien helped her, shrugging out of the fabric to reveal his muscled chest and shoulders. Years of swimming had kept him in excellent physical condition, and Celeste could not resist placing her palms against his warm skin, feeling his heartbeat thundering beneath her touch. They moved to the bed together, and Damien laid Celeste down on the rose petals with infinite care. He kissed her neck, her collarbone, the sensitive spot behind her ear that made her gasp. His hands explored her body with patience and reverence, learning what made her sigh with pleasure. Celeste had never felt anything so intense, so overwhelming. Every nerve ending seemed alive with sensation. "Tell me what you like." Damien murmured against her skin. Tell me what feels good. I want to know everything that brings you pleasure. Celeste could barely form words. Everything, she managed to whisper. Everything you do feels amazing. Damien smiled against her shoulder and continued his exploration. He took his time removing the remaining barriers between them, making sure she was comfortable with each new intimacy. When he finally positioned himself above her, he paused and looked directly into her eyes. I love you more than I thought it was possible to love anyone, he said, his voice thick with emotion. You have given me everything, Celeste. Your trust, your innocence, your heart. I will spend every day of my life proving I am worthy of those gifts. Celeste wrapped her arms around his neck and pulled him closer. I love you too. Make me yours completely, Damien. I want to belong to you in every way. Damien kissed her deeply and began to move, and Celeste gasped at the new sensations flooding through her. There was a moment of discomfort that Damien soothed with whispered endearments and gentle kisses. Then there was only pleasure building between them, a rhythm as old as time itself. Damien kept his promise to be gentle, moving with careful control, even as his own need threatened to overwhelm him. Celeste discovered her body was capable of sensations she had never imagined. She moved with Damien, learning the dance of intimacy, trusting him to guide her. When pleasure finally crested over her in waves, she cried out his name and clung to him as her anchor. Damien followed moments later, surrendering himself completely to the woman who had transformed his entire world. Afterward, they lay tangled together in the rose petals, hearts still racing and skin sheened with perspiration. That was incredible, Celeste whispered, her head resting on Damien's chest. I never knew it could be like that. Damien stroked her hair tenderly. Being with you exceeded every fantasy I have had. You are perfect, Celeste. Absolutely perfect. They made love twice more that night, each time Celeste growing more confident and Damien discovering new ways to bring her pleasure. Between rounds of passion, they talked and laughed and shared dreams for their future together. Damien told her about his plans to expand his renewable energy initiatives to include ocean conservation technology. Celeste shared her vision of establishing marine sanctuaries around the world. As dawn began to paint the sky in shades of pink and gold, they finally fell asleep wrapped in each other's arms. Celeste's last thought before sleep claimed her was that she had found her home not in any physical place, but in Damien's embrace. She belonged to him now, and he belonged to her. Their love story had begun with a collision, deepened through understanding, and now they were bound together in the most intimate way possible. Whatever challenges the future brought, they would face them as partners. Two souls who had found in each other not just passion but purpose, not just love, but a lifetime of devotion and discovery.